In the shadowlands between consciousness and the unknown depths of our psyche, there emerges a figure of luminous significance, Sophia, whose very name resonates with the harmonic frequencies of wisdom across millennia. She comes to us not merely as a concept, but as a living presence, a psychic reality that has captivated humanity since ancient times, appearing and reappearing through the veils of history like a persistent dream demanding interpretation. The etymology of Sophia carries us back to ancient Greece, where she embodied not merely intellectual knowing, but a profound understanding that penetrates the very marrow of existence. Wisdom as embodied gnosis rather than abstracted knowledge. Yet to trace her lineage solely through Hellenistic thought would be to miss the rich tapestry of her manifestations. For she stands at the crossroads of multiple wisdom traditions, a syncretic goddess born of cultural collision and spiritual yearning. Join me as we explore the story of the Gnostic Sophia and how she emerges as a powerful archetype that Carl Jung recognized as the eternal feminine seeking wholeness in the collective unconscious. Please remember to like and subscribe and hit the notification bell to make sure you don't miss a future video. And check out the other channel I'm involved in called Folks of Yore, where we cover fascinating stories from history, looking at history from a more human perspective. The link is in the description. Alright, let's dive in. In the Fertile Crescent of Hellenistic syncretism, where Egyptian, Greek, Jewish, and Persian currents merged in mysterious alchemy, Sophia found particularly fertile ground. The ancient Egyptians knew her as Isis, she of many names, while in Jewish wisdom literature, she appeared as Chokhmah, the first of God's creation, who declares in Proverbs, "The Lord created me at the beginning of his work." These traditions converged and transmuted in the crucible of Alexandria, where the boundaries between mythologies dissolved like salt in the great sea of collective imagination. It was precisely the syncretic quality of Sophia that captivated Carl Jung when he first encountered Gnostic texts during his period of profound psychological crisis and self-exploration following his break with Freud, what he would later call his confrontation with the unconscious. In these ancient writings, Jung discovered not mere historical curiosities, but living expressions of psychological processes he was himself experiencing. As he wrote in his autobiographical Memories, Dreams, and Reflections, the Gnostic symbols spoke to him directly, appearing spontaneously in his own dreams and visions before he had conscious knowledge of their historical precedents. This synchronicity convinced Jung that the Gnostics had intuited profound psychological realities that would take modern psychology centuries to rediscover through clinical observation. It was in this environment that Gnostic systems flowered with extraordinary psycho-spiritual complexity, and it is here that Jung's penetrating gaze would later find resonance with his own discoveries in the labyrinth of the unconscious. For Jung, the Gnostics were not merely historical curiosities, but kindred souls who had intuited profound psychological realities through mythic imagery. In his landmark text, Aeon, Jung observes how Sophia represents the world of the Ogdoad, a double quaternity that bridges the manifest and unmanifest realms, a structure that would later reappear in his understanding of the self as the organizing archetype of psychic wholeness. What distinguishes Jung's approach to Sophia and other Gnostic symbols is his revolutionary understanding that these are not mere fantasies or theological speculations, but expressions of authentic psychological experience, the psyche revealing itself through symbolic language. Psychology can lay hold of the phenomenon, Jung writes in Aeon, but must expressly refrain from passing metaphysical judgments. Instead, he recognized in the Gnostic Sophia a symbol of immense psychological significance that continues to constellate in the modern psyche, manifesting in dreams, visions, and creative expressions as the unconscious seeks completion. The figure of Sophia thus stands at the threshold between ancient wisdom and modern psychology, between mythic narrative and psychological process, between the collective history of human spiritual striving and the individual journey toward wholeness. She is both historical artifact and living reality, cosmic principle and intimate companion, a bridge between worlds that continues to call us toward integration of what has been fragmented, recognition of what has been forgotten, and reconciliation of what has been divided since the dawn of consciousness. The tale of Sophia unfolds not as mere allegory, but as cosmic truth, a narrative that pulses with psychological significance in the Gnostic cosmology. According to texts like the Apocryphon of John and Pistis Sophia, Sophia's journey traces the arc of consciousness itself, from primordial unity through fragmentation to ultimate reintegration and wholeness. In the beginning, before time's inception, dwelled the ineffable Pleroma, fullness in Greek, a realm of divine perfection wherein Sophia existed as one of the eons, those emanations of the unknowable Father. The Valentinian Gnostics, as documented in Irenaeus' accounts, positioned her within the cosmic complex of the Ogdoad, a double quaternity of primal forces. Then came the moment of cosmic rupture. Sophia, moved by an inexplicable longing, what the Gnostics termed enthemesis, or passionate desire, sought to know the unknowable Father directly without mediation. This act, driven by love yet transcending cosmic boundaries, precipitated her fall. As recounted in On the Origin of the World, Sophia's unauthorized creative act produced the monstrous demiurge, Yaldabaoth, the child of chaos, who, ignorant of his origins, proclaimed himself the only god. Jung observes in Aeon that Saturn, as we have already mentioned, is the other sun, the sole Niger of alchemy. Here he is the primus anthropus. This cosmic error resulted in the creation of our material universe, an imperfect reflection of divine reality, shadow cast through ignorance. The trauma of this cosmic accident tore Sophia asunder. The higher aspect remained in proximity to the Pleroma, while her lower aspect, called Achamoth in various texts, became entangled in materiality. Jung notes this duality, commenting in Aeon that the equivalent of Sophia is Prunikos, who sinks into the lower regions. This splitting mirrors the psychological phenomenon of dissociation, where traumatic experience fragments the unified personality into disconnected aspects. The redemptive arc of the myth finds its fulfillment when Christ, sent from the Pleroma, descends to awaken Sophia to remembrance of her divine origins. This soteriological drama represents the recovery of the divine spark, the scintilla or the spinther imprisoned within matter. Jung recognized this theme of the hidden divine essence, writing of the very small spark that was finely mingled in the dark waters below. In Gnostic understanding, this spark exists not only cosmically, but within each human soul that has awakened to gnosis. The culmination of Sophia's journey is her restoration to wholeness and the redemption of cosmic order. Her reintegration serves as template for the spiritual journey of every Gnostic initiate, recognition of divine origin, awareness of cosmic alienation, and ultimate return to primordial unity. This mythic pattern transcends cultural boundaries, reappearing across wisdom traditions as the eternal story of exile and return, forgetting and remembrance, fragmentation and integration. Thus, the Gnostic narrative of Sophia provides not just theological speculation, but a profound map of consciousness itself, a cartography of the soul's journey that Jung would later recognize as aligned with the psychological process of individuation. In this mythic mirror, we glimpse not only ancient wisdom, but our own reflection. For as Jung intuited, these sacred stories speak not merely of cosmic events, but of the perennial dynamics of the human psyche in its quest for wholeness. Within the labyrinthine corridors of Jung's analytical psychology, the Gnostic Sophia emerges not merely as theological construct, but as living archetype, a primordial pattern of psychic energy that constellates both within individual consciousness and across the collective unconscious of humanity. Jung's fascination with Gnostic symbolism stemmed from his recognition that these ancient mystics had intuited psychological realities through mythic imagination long before the birth of modern psychology. Sophia, in Jung's psychological framework, represents the quintessential manifestation of the anima, that feminine component of the male psyche which serves as mediating force between consciousness and the depths of the unconscious. In Aeon, Jung establishes her connection to the world of the Ogdoad, positioning her within a quaternary structure fundamental to psychic wholeness. This quaternary arrangement is not arbitrary, but reflects the underlying architecture of the self. What distinguished Jung's approach was his recognition that Sophia functions specifically as the fourth element that completes the divine quaternity. In traditional Christian theology, Jung perceived an incomplete Trinitarian model that excluded the feminine principle, a psychological imbalance with profound consequences for Western consciousness. As Jung writes in Answer to Job, the quaternity is an archetype of almost universal occurrence. It forms the logical basis for any whole judgment. Sophia, in her wisdom aspect, provides the missing feminine fourth, balancing the masculine trinity and creating the potential for wholeness. The bridge-making function of Sophia between realms appears repeatedly in Jung's analyses. In Aeon, he observes how the serpent symbolism associated with the Redeemer serves as a mediator, drawing to itself those parts or substances in man that are of divine origin, and carrying them back to their heavenly birthplace. This mediating function parallels Sophia's role as intermediary between the earthly and divine realms, a psychological parallel to what Jung termed the transcendent function, which mediates between consciousness and unconscious aspects of psyche. Within Jung's developmental model of the anima, Sophia represents the highest, fourth stage of anima development, wisdom. This progression moves from primitive, biological aspects, Eve, through romantic and aesthetic dimensions, Helen, and spiritual devotion, Mary, to culminate in wisdom, Sophia, as transcendent mediator of meaning. This fourth stage represents the anima as mediator of spiritual profundity. The fall of Sophia into matter finds psychological parallel in what Jung understood as the necessary descent into the unconscious, that confrontation with the shadow which precedes any authentic integration. Her descent in the form of a dove to beget Saturn represents the penetration of consciousness into the dark waters of the unconscious, where transformation becomes possible. This descent is not pathological, but necessary, the first step in the opus contra naturam, the alchemical work against nature's instinctual flow. The encounter with shadow, that constellation of repressed, denied, or unacknowledged aspects of personality, mirrors Sophia's entanglement with darker forces. Jung recognized that psychological growth requires not the elimination of shadow, but its integration, a process reflected in the Gnostic narrative of Sophia's redemption. The alienation from divine origins experienced by Sophia parallels what Jung observed as the modern psychological condition, a fragmentation of consciousness from its deeper sources. Sophia's imprisonment in matter corresponds to what Jung described as the scintilla or spark, buried within the prima materia of the unconscious. The path of individuation, Jung's term for the lifelong process of psychological integration leading toward wholeness, finds reflection in Sophia's journey toward redemption. The awakening to self-knowledge that characterizes this path parallels the Gnostic moment of anamnesis, or remembrance of divine origins. Jung saw in the Gnostic narrative a profound map of psychological transformation, the integration of a previously split-off aspect of personality into an expanded consciousness. Central to this process is what Jung termed the coincidentia oppositorum, the union of opposites that transcends logical contradiction. Sophia's reunification with her higher aspects represents psychologically the integration of consciousness and unconscious, masculine and feminine, light and shadow. Those polarities whose tension generates the energy for transformation. The role of Sophia in facilitating this integration stems from her nature as both divine and earthly, transcendent and immanent. The ultimate goal of Sophia's journey, like that of Jungian individuation, is wholeness, not perfection. Jung distinguished carefully between these concepts, noting that wholeness necessarily includes imperfection, limitation, and shadow. The self, as a goal of psychological development, emerges through the integration of all aspects of personality into a dynamic, living unity, mirroring the Gnostic vision of cosmic restoration through Sophia's redemption. Thus, in Jung's psychological reading, the Gnostic Sophia emerges not as abstract theological concept, but as a living representation of the psyche's movement toward integration, a symbol of the potential wholeness that lies encoded within the fragmented modern consciousness, awaiting recognition and realization through the transformative work of psychological awareness. Beyond his foundational explorations in Aeon, Jung's engagement with the figure of Sophia threads through his later works with increasing depth and nuance, revealing her centrality to his evolving understanding of psyche and spirit. In these reflections, Sophia emerges as a symbolic manifestation of wisdom's continuing emergence through the collective unconscious. In answer to Job, perhaps Jung's most controversial and personally significant work, Sophia appears as the catalytic feminine principle whose wisdom transforms the divine consciousness itself. Jung portrays her as the essential mediator who facilitates God's self-reflection after the cosmic injustice perpetrated against Job. The approach of Sophia betokens a new creation, Jung writes. But this time it is not the world that is to be changed. Rather, it is God who intends to change his own nature. This remarkable insight positions Sophia not merely as passive wisdom, but as active agent of transformation within the divine itself. What Jung terms her philanthropic influence, guiding God toward incarnation. The appearance of Sophia within the psyche of God represents, for Jung, a profound moment of divine evolution, the emergence of reflective consciousness within what had previously been unconscious power. She reinforces the much-needed self-reflection and thus makes possible Yahweh's decision to become man. Here Jung's psychological insight penetrates to the heart of theological mastery, the necessity of feminine wisdom to balance and complete masculine power, creating the potential for genuine relationship rather than mere dominance. Jung's exploration of Sophia's relationship to Mary reveals the depth to his understanding of archetypal continuity. Mary, in Jung's analysis, becomes the incarnate of Sophia, manifesting the eternal wisdom principle within historical time. As the bride of God and queen of heaven, she holds the place of the Old Testament Sophia. This connection illuminates Jung's understanding of archetypal patterns persisting through shifting historical and religious contexts. The same underlying psychic reality appearing in new forms appropriate to changing consciousness. In Mysterium Conjunctionis, his final major work, Jung explores Sophia through the lens of alchemical symbolism, where she appears as the anima mundi, or world soul, that living spirit within matter that the alchemists sought to liberate through their transformative art. In this symbolic language of alchemy, Jung found rich vocabulary for expressing psychological processes of integration and transformation. Sophia's presence in this context connects her directly to the scintilla or spark, that divine essence hidden within the prima materia of unconscious content. Jung identifies Sophia with the alchemical feminine principle that holds dominion during the Nigrido phase of transformation. The connection between Sophia and the anima mundi emphasizes her function as bridge between spirit and matter, connecting the transcendent with the immanent. This integration of apparent opposites represents precisely the psychological function that Jung associated with emergence of the self through the individuation process. The hieros gamos, or sacred marriage in alchemy, provided Jung with a powerful symbol for the integration of masculine and feminine principles within the psyche. Sophia's role in this sacred union demonstrates her function as both bride and matrix of transformation. The conjunctio oppositorum that results from this union produces what the alchemists termed the lapis philosophorum, the philosopher's stone, which Jung recognized as a symbol of the self. What distinguishes Jung's understanding of Sophia is his recognition of her not merely as historical symbol, but as a living psychic reality continuing to unfold within contemporary consciousness. The feminine wisdom she embodies represents not an abstract theological concept, but a necessary counterbalance to the hyper-rationality and one-sided masculinity of modern technological culture. A healing presence emerging from the depths of the collective unconscious to guide humanity toward a more integrated relationship with both inner and outer nature. Through Jung's deepening exploration in these major works, Sophia thus reveals herself as nothing less than the personification of the wisdom function of the psyche itself. That capacity for meaningful integration that transcends mere knowledge to become embodied understanding. Her continuing relevance lies not in historical curiosity, but in her manifestation of a mode of knowing that unites intellect with feeling, consciousness with unconsciousness, and spirit with matter. A wisdom our fragmented modern consciousness desperately needs for both individual and collective wholeness. She represents the missing feminine fourth that completes the Trinity, the wisdom that balances power, the relatedness that heals alienation. As Jung recognized in his analysis of Answer to Job, we have not, therefore, by any means heard the last of it. Indeed, Sophia continues to emerge within dreams, creative expressions, and spiritual quests of individuals across diverse traditions. A living presence guiding humanity toward a more integrated relationship with both inner and outer nature, offering a pathway toward wholeness that honors both the light and shadow of our shared human experience. Her journey mirrors our own psychological development, from unconscious unity through necessary fragmentation to hard-won integration. This pattern of descent and return, of loss and recovery, speaks to the fundamental rhythm of psychological growth that Jung termed individuation. Thank you once again for watching. Let me know in the comments what you think of Jung's analysis of Sophia. I read every comment, so keep them coming. If you like the video, please remember to like and subscribe and hit the notification bell. Check out my website, oculus.com, and check out Folks of Yore, the other channel I'm involved in, where we look at the human side of history. Links are in the description. Until next time.